The real estate agent's perfectly manicured finger was reaching for my doorbell when I opened the door myself. She froze, her hand suspended in mid-air, her practiced smile faltering. Behind her, parked arrogantly in my driveway, was my son-in-law's BMW, and behind the wheel I could see his face drain of color. "I'm sorry," the agent said, glancing down at her tablet with confusion. "I'm here to show the property at 4257 Maple Grove. The owner is... Well, I was told the owner is incapacitated and the family has power of attorney." "The owner," I said, my voice steady and cold, "is standing right in front of you, and this property is not for sale. My name is Catherine Mitchell. I'm 73 years old, and up until 6 weeks ago, I thought I knew my family. I thought the daughter I raised and the man she married had at least a shred of decency. I was wrong. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand something. They didn't just try to steal my house. They tried to steal my dignity, my autonomy, and my future. They underestimated me in the worst possible way, and that was their first mistake." It was a Tuesday morning in late August when my daughter, Jennifer, first brought up the idea of me getting some help around the house. We were having coffee in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd taught her to bake chocolate chip cookies, where we'd laughed over terrible jokes, where I'd held her when her first boyfriend broke her heart. "Mom, you're not getting any younger," she said, stirring her coffee with that particular intensity that meant she'd rehearsed this conversation. "Dad's been gone for 5 years now. This house is too big for you. The maintenance, the yard work, the stairs." I'd looked at her over the rim of my cup. "I manage just fine, Jennifer. I have my gardener come twice a month. I can still climb my own stairs, and I like my house. But what if something happens? What if you fall? What if—" "Then I'll call 911 like any sensible person," I'd interrupted. "Sweetheart, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not ready to give up my independence." She'd smiled then, but it hadn't reached her eyes. "Of course not, Mom. I'm just worried about you, that's all." I should have seen it then. That flicker of something that wasn't quite worry, but I was still living in the world where my daughter loved me unconditionally, where family meant protection, not predation. The visits increased after that. Jennifer and her husband Brad started coming by more often, usually unannounced. Brad would walk through the house making comments about the outdated kitchen, the old furnace, how much the place would be worth if someone renovated it properly. "Prime real estate," he said once, standing in my living room like he already owned it. "This neighborhood has really gone upscale. Properties like this are selling for $750, $800, 100,000 easy." I'd felt a cold finger trace down my spine, but I'd dismissed it. Surely my own daughter wouldn't. Then came the incident that they would later use against me. It was a Saturday morning. I'd gone to the grocery store, done my shopping, come home and put everything away. Routine, simple. Except apparently I'd left my car running in the garage. I hadn't noticed until Jennifer happened to stop by an hour later and found it still running. "Mom!" she'd shrieked, her voice shrill with what I now recognize as performed panic. "You could have died. Carbon monoxide poisoning. How could you be so careless?" I'd been embarrassed. Genuinely embarrassed. I'm 73, not 30, and yes, sometimes I forget things. Who doesn't? But the way Jennifer had looked at Brad, the way they'd exchanged that glance, I should have known. "We need to talk about your safety, Mom," Brad had said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "This isn't normal forgetfulness, this is dangerous." "It was one mistake," I'd protested. "One mistake that could have killed you," Jennifer had shot back, and then softer with tears in her eyes that I now know were calculated. "Mom, please, we love you. We just want to make sure you're safe. Maybe it's time to think about other living arrangements, somewhere with support, somewhere you don't have to worry about things like turning off the car." I'd refused, of course. This was my home. My husband Harold and I had bought this house 42 years ago. We'd raised Jennifer here. His workshop was still in the basement, his tools hanging on the pegboard exactly where he'd left them. His rose bushes were in the back garden. This house held every memory of our life together. "I'm not leaving my home," I'd said firmly, and that's when everything changed. The next week, Jennifer brought a lawyer to my house. Not my lawyer, I'd used Robert Chen for estate planning for years, but some slick young man named Marcus something or other with perfect teeth and a briefcase that probably cost more than my first car. "Mrs. Mitchell," he'd said, settling onto my couch uninvited, "your daughter has expressed some concerns about your ability to manage your affairs. Now, I want you to know that there are options available that can help ensure your assets are protected and your care is guaranteed as you age." "I'm managing my affairs just fine," I'd said coldly. Of course," he'd soothed. "But wouldn't you feel better knowing that if something did happen, if you did become incapacitated, your daughter would be able to step in immediately, without having to go through the courts, without delays? We can set up a power of attorney that would give Jennifer the ability to make decisions on your behalf if you're unable to do so." I looked at Jennifer. "You want power of attorney over me?" "Just as a safety measure, Mom," she'd said quickly. "Just in case. You'd still make all your own decisions. This would only activate if something happened to you." The lawyer had nodded. "It's a very standard arrangement, very common for people your age." People my age. As if 73 meant incompetent. As if I hadn't been successfully managing a household, raising a daughter, and helping Harold run his accounting business for decades. "I'll think about it," I'd said, which was code for "absolutely not, but I'm too polite to throw you both out of my house right now." They'd left, but the lawyer had forgotten his business card on my coffee table. I'd thrown it in the recycling the moment the door closed. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed that Jennifer had started speaking about me differently to other people. When her friend Carol called and I answered the phone, I could hear Jennifer in the background saying, "Oh, she has her good days and bad days. We're really worried about her." Good days and bad days? I was the same as I'd always been. I did the crossword puzzle every morning. I played bridge with my friends every Wednesday. I volunteered at the library. I was living my life. But Jennifer was building a narrative, and I was the villain in her story, or rather, the victim who needed saving. Then came the doctor's appointment. Jennifer had made me an appointment with a new doctor, not Dr. Patterson, who'd been my physician for 20 years, but some neurologist named Dr. Reeves. She'd told me it was just a routine checkup, given your age. I'd gone, because despite everything, she was still my daughter, and part of me wanted to believe that she genuinely cared about my health. Dr. Reeves had asked me a series of questions. What year was it? Who was the president? Could I count backwards from 100 by sevens? Could I remember 3 words and repeat them back to him? I'd answered everything correctly, of course, because there's nothing wrong with my mind. But then he'd started asking about my forgetfulness, about whether I'd had any incidents recently, and I'd realized Jennifer had primed him. She'd told him I was declining, that I was having memory issues, that I'd left my car running. "Mrs. Mitchell," he'd said carefully, "sometimes families notice changes before the patient does. Your daughter is concerned about your ability to live independently." "My daughter," I'd said, standing up, "is concerned about something, but I don't think it's my well-being." I'd walked out of that office and driven straight home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. Jennifer had left her purse in my living room when she'd visited that afternoon. I opened it and found her phone. She didn't have a passcode. She'd always been careless about that. What I found made my blood run cold. Text messages, dozens of them, between Jennifer and Brad. I scrolled through them, each one worse than the last. They went back weeks. This wasn't some impulsive scheme. They'd been planning this systematically. The lawyer says if we can get a doctor to declare her incompetent, we can get emergency power of attorney. Dr. Reeves is on board. He'll write up the evaluation the way we need it. Once we have the POA, we can list the house immediately. Marcus says it'll sell in a week, maybe less. What if she fights it? She won't be able to. Once she's declared incompetent, she has no legal standing. And then? Then we put her in Shady Pines. It's only $3,500 a month. The house will cover that for years, and we'll have the rest for ourselves. But it was the earlier messages that truly gutted me. Messages from months before, when they'd first started planning this betrayal. Your mom's sitting on a gold mine and living like she's poor. That house could pay for Maddie's college and then some. I know, but how do we get her to sell? We don't ask her to sell. We make it so she can't say no. You mean like power of attorney? Exactly. We just need to establish a pattern of incompetence, document everything, build a case. They talked about me like I was an obstacle, a problem to solve, not a person, not a mother, not someone who'd sacrificed everything to give Jennifer the life she'd had. There were messages about how they'd staged things. The car in the garage? Jennifer had turned it back on after I'd parked it. She'd actually restarted the engine and left it running, then discovered it an hour later. It hadn't been my mistake at all. It had been sabotage. I'd sat there in my kitchen, my daughter's phone in my trembling hands, and felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had already cracked. This was something else, something harder and colder. I thought about the little girl who used to hold my hand crossing the street, the teenager who'd sobbed in my arms when she didn't get into her first-choice college, the bride I'd helped into her wedding dress, tears streaming down my face because she looked so beautiful. Where had that girl gone? When had she turned into this stranger who could plot against her own mother with such calculated cruelty? My daughter, my only child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the girl whose skinned knees I'd bandaged, whose tears I'd dried, was planning to have me declared incompetent and steal my house. Not for my care, not for my safety, for money, for a new kitchen in their already beautiful home, for a vacation, for whatever it is that made them feel entitled to take what I'd spent a lifetime building. I put Jennifer's phone back in her purse. I didn't say a word. I smiled when she picked it up to leave, kissed her cheek like I always did, and then I went to war. Next morning, I called Robert Chen, my actual lawyer, the one who'd helped Harold and me set up our wills, who'd guided us through estate planning, who'd been a friend for 20 years. "Robert," I said, "I need your help, and I need you to move fast." I told him everything. The texts, the doctor, the lawyer, Marcus, the conspiracy to have me declared incompetent. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Catherine," he said finally, his voice tight with anger, "what they're attempting is elder abuse. We can file charges." "No," I interrupted. "I don't want to file charges. I want to make it impossible for them to take my house. Can we do that?" "Absolutely. We can put the house in a trust. We can add protections that make it impossible for anyone but you to sell or transfer it without your explicit witnessed consent. But Catherine, if they're really trying to have you declared incompetent, then we need to beat them to it. Can you get me an appointment with a neurologist? A real one, who doesn't know Jennifer, who'll give me an honest evaluation?" "I can do better than that. I'll get you 3. We'll have you evaluated by independent physicians who'll testify, if necessary, that you're of sound mind and competent to make your own decisions." "How long will that take?" "I can have the first appointment set up by tomorrow. The trust documentation will take about a week to prepare. Catherine, you'll need to sign everything at my office with witnesses. We'll video record the signing to establish that you're competent and acting of your own free will." "Do it," I said, "all of it." Over the next 2 weeks, I became a woman on a mission. I saw 3 different neurologists. I took every cognitive test they had. I aced all of them. They all wrote detailed reports confirming that I was cognitively intact, mentally competent, and fully capable of managing my own affairs. The first neurologist, Dr. Patterson, a woman about my age with kind eyes and no-nonsense attitude, put me through 2 hours of testing, memory tests, problem-solving exercises, questions about current events. She had me draw clock faces and remember word lists. She tested my executive function, my spatial reasoning, my verbal fluency. At the end, she'd leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Mrs. Mitchell, I don't know what you're worried about, but cognitively you're sharper than most 50-year-olds I see. Your test scores are in the 95th percentile for your age group. Actually, they're in the 95th percentile for any age group." "Can you put that in writing?" I'd asked. "Absolutely, and if anyone challenges it, I'll testify in court if necessary." The other 2 evaluations went similarly. Each doctor was independent. Each used different testing methods, and each reached the same conclusion. There was nothing wrong with my mind. I met with Robert multiple times. We restructured everything. The house went into an irrevocable trust with me as the sole trustee. No one could force a sale without my explicit witnessed consent. We added provisions that if anyone attempted to have me declared incompetent, they would be automatically removed from my will. We recorded everything. Video testimony of me explaining the situation, answering questions, demonstrating my competence. Robert even had me write out a statement in my own handwriting, explaining why I was taking these actions. "Catherine," Robert had said during one of our meetings, "what they're attempting to do to you, it happens more often than people realize. Adult children convincing themselves they're entitled to their parents' assets, and the system is supposed to protect vulnerable elders, but sometimes it's weaponized against them. What you're doing here, this documentation, these protections, you're not just protecting yourself, you're creating a template for how elders can fight back." "I'm just trying to keep my home," I'd said. "You're doing more than that. You're maintaining your dignity and autonomy. That's everything." "If they try to challenge this," Robert said during another session, "we have ironclad proof that you were of sound mind and acting to protect yourself from exploitation." But I didn't just stop at legal protections. I went further. I called my bank and set up alerts for any suspicious activity on my accounts. I changed all my passwords. I got a security camera system installed on my house, the kind with video and audio recording. The technician who installed it was a young man named David, and when I explained why I needed such comprehensive coverage, his face had darkened with anger. "My grandmother went through something similar," he'd said quietly. "Her son, my uncle, cleaned out her bank account before anyone realized what was happening. She died in a state facility because she couldn't afford anything better. I'm going to make sure your system is bulletproof, Mrs. Mitchell. Nobody's getting past these cameras." He installed cameras at every entrance, in my driveway covering the front and backyards. He set them up to save to cloud storage that only I could access. He taught me how to review footage on my phone. "Anyone comes onto your property without permission, you'll have video evidence," he'd said. "Time-stamped, date-stamped, everything." I put up no trespassing signs on professional posts at the edge of my property. I documented the date I installed them, took photos, and filed them with my lawyer. And then I did something that Jennifer would later claim was proof of my paranoia. I changed all my locks. "Catherine," Robert had said when I told him, "that might seem aggressive." "They have keys to my house," I'd replied. "They've been coming and going whenever they want. Not anymore." The locksmith came on a Thursday morning. His name was Bill, and he'd been in business for 35 years. When I explained what I needed, not just new locks, but the kind that couldn't be picked or bypassed easily, he'd nodded with understanding. "You'd be surprised how many calls I get like this," he'd said while working. "Adult children with keys to their parents' homes, thinking they have a right to come and go as they please. Sometimes it's concern, sometimes it's control, and sometimes—" He'd looked at me meaningfully. "It's something worse. Heavy-duty deadbolts on all the doors, new locks on the windows. I kept one spare key in Robert's office safe and one hidden in a place no one but I would ever think to look. Inside the hollowed-out bottom of Harold's old tackle box in the basement, the one Jennifer had always been too squeamish to touch because it still smelled like fish bait. I also hired a geriatric care manager, an independent professional who could evaluate my ability to live independently and testify to it if necessary. Her name was Susan, and she was a former nurse with 30 years of experience. She came to my house once a week. She evaluated my medication management. Perfect, I had a daily pill organizer and never missed a dose. My housekeeping, clean and organized. My nutrition, I still cooked healthy meals for myself. My cognitive function, sharp as ever. And my social engagement, bridge club, library volunteering, regular outings with friends. After a month, Susan wrote a glowing report confirming that I was not only competent, but thriving in independent living. I was ready. I had my armor on. My fortress was secure. And then Jennifer and Brad made their move. It started with Jennifer showing up at my door, looking upset. "Mom, why aren't you answering your phone?" she demanded. I'd been screening her calls, but I didn't tell her that. "I've been busy," I said simply. "Can I come in? We need to talk." "Actually, Jennifer, this isn't a good time." She'd pushed past me anyway, Brad following behind her like a shadow. "Mom, Brad and I have been talking, and we really think, Mom, why is there a camera?" She'd spotted the security system. "Security," I said calmly. "Security? From what?" "Mom, you're being paranoid. First you change all the locks without telling us." "My locks, my house. We're your family. What if there's an emergency? What if we need to get in?" "Then you can call 911, just like anyone else." Brad had been walking around my living room, looking at things with that same appraising expression. "Catherine, we're concerned about these decisions you're making. They seem erratic, impulsive, not like you." I'd felt a hot surge of anger. What's not like me? Protecting my property, making my own decisions. Installing cameras, changing locks, refusing to see your own family. These are signs of paranoia, Catherine. They're concerning. "You know what I find concerning?" I'd said, my voice dangerous and quiet. "Text messages planning to have me declared incompetent so you can steal my house." The room had gone completely silent. Jennifer's face had gone white, then red. "You went through my phone? Mom, that's a violation of privacy. That's how I found out my own daughter was planning to rob me." I'd stood up, feeling stronger than I had in weeks. "I know about Dr. Reeves. I know about the lawyer Marcus. I know about your plan to put me in Shady Pines. I know everything, Jennifer." Brad had stepped forward, his face hard. "Catherine, you're not thinking clearly. You're confused. We only want what's best for you. Get out of my house." "Mom, get out of my house!" I'd shouted it, loud enough that I was sure the security cameras picked it up clearly. "You are not welcome here. You have no authority here. And if you come back without my invitation, I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing." They'd left, but not before Brad turned in the doorway. "We're trying to help you, Catherine, and we're not going to stop just because you're being stubborn and irrational. We'll do what we need to do to keep you safe." The threat was clear. They were going forward with their plan. I'd called Robert immediately. "They know I'm on to them. What happens now?" "Now we wait," he'd said, "and we document everything. Keep those cameras running. Don't engage with them unless witnesses are present. And Catherine, don't let them rattle you. You've done everything right." For 3 weeks, I didn't hear from Jennifer or Brad. No calls, no visits. The silence was worse than the confrontation because I knew they were planning something. I found out what that something was when Susan, my care manager, called me one afternoon. "Catherine," she said, "I just got a very strange call from someone claiming to be your daughter's lawyer. He demanded copies of my evaluation reports, claiming he had power of attorney and needed them for protective proceedings." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that I work for you, not for anyone claiming to represent you, and that he could submit a formal request through proper legal channels. He didn't like that." The next call came from my bank. Someone had attempted to access my accounts using what they claimed was a power of attorney document. The bank had refused and flagged it as potential fraud. "Mrs. Mitchell," the bank manager said, The document they presented appeared to be forged. It had your signature, but it didn't match any of our records, and the notary information was invalid. They'd forged a power of attorney. My daughter and her husband had actually forged legal documents to try to steal my money. "I want to press charges," I'd said. "We've already reported it to the police. They'll be in contact with you." That evening, I got a call from Jennifer, crying hysterically. "Mom, please, you have to call off the police. It was a misunderstanding. Brad was just trying to help." "By forging my signature? He thought he was protecting you. Mom, please, you don't understand how hard this has been for us, watching you decline." "I'm not declining, Jennifer. I'm thriving. But you can't see that, can you? All you can see is dollar signs. That's not fair. Mom, I love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't be trying to have me locked away so you could sell my house." She'd hung up, and I'd cried then, for the first time since this whole nightmare began. I cried for the daughter I thought I had, for the relationship that was now broken beyond repair, for the betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. But I didn't back down. I gave my statement to the police. I provided all the documentation, the texts, the forged power of attorney, everything, and then I waited for their next move. It came exactly 2 weeks later, on a Thursday morning. I was having my coffee, doing my crossword puzzle, when I saw a car pull up outside. Not Jennifer's car. A sleek silver sedan with a magnetic sign on the door. Prestige Property Solutions. A woman got out, dressed in a sharp business suit, carrying a tablet and a lockbox. A real estate agent. My security camera caught everything. I watched on my phone as she walked up to my door, pulling out her phone to make a call. "Yes, I'm here," she said to whoever was on the other end. "The lockbox code you gave me doesn't work, though. I'll just ring the doorbell." I looked at the camera feed and saw Brad's BMW pulling into my driveway behind her car. He was parking, getting out, clearly planning to be here when the agent showed the house that he somehow thought he had the right to sell. This was it. This was their final play. They'd somehow listed my house for sale, probably using that forged power of attorney, and actually thought they could show it, sell it, and force me out. They'd underestimated me one last time. I went to the door before she could ring the bell. I opened it myself. I watched her freeze, watched her practiced smile falter. "I'm sorry," she said, glancing at her tablet. "I'm here to show the property at 4257 Maple Grove. The owner is, well, I was told the owner is incapacitated and the family has power of attorney." "The owner," I said, my voice steady and cold, "is standing right in front of you, and this property is not for sale." Behind her, Brad's face went from confident to pale in about 3 seconds flat. He got out of his car, trying to salvage the situation. "Catherine, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said. "Just like you can explain the forged power of attorney, the one the police are currently investigating?" The real estate agent looked. Between us, understanding dawning on her face. "I'm sorry. There seems to be some confusion. Mr. Bradley provided documentation that he had legal authority to list this property." "Mr. Bradley," I said clearly, "is my son-in-law. He has no authority, legal or otherwise, over my property. The documents he provided you are fraudulent. I have never authorized the sale of my home." Her face went professional and carefully neutral. "I see. I apologize for the intrusion, ma'am. I'll be contacting my broker immediately." She looked at Brad with barely concealed anger. "And I believe our firm will be filing a complaint about the fraudulent documents." "You do that," I said. Then I looked at Brad. "You are trespassing on my property. You have exactly 60 seconds to get back in your car and leave, or I'm calling the police." "Catherine, please, we can work this out." 55 seconds. "Your daughter is worried sick about you." 50 seconds, and Brad? The police already have the forged power of attorney. They're building a case for elder abuse, fraud, and attempted theft. Every time you show up here, every call Jennifer makes, every stunt you pull, it's more evidence. You're going to regret this. Jennifer deserves better than this kind of treatment from her own mother. 40 seconds. And you can tell Jennifer that she's been removed from my will. Everything I have will go to charity when I die. She'll get exactly what she's earned. Nothing. He'd started backing toward his car, his face twisted with rage. You're a bitter, paranoid old woman. You're going to die alone. Maybe, I'd said calmly, but I'll die in my own house, on my own terms, with my dignity intact, which is more than you can say. He'd peeled out of my driveway fast enough to leave skid marks. The real estate agent had apologized 3 more times and left quickly, and I'd stood there in my doorway, in my house, on my property, victorious. I went inside and called Robert. It's done, I said. They tried to list the house with a forged POA. The real estate agent witnessed everything. Brad admitted on camera that he was trying to sell my house. That's excellent news for the case, Robert said. Catherine, with this evidence, the district attorney might actually prosecute. This isn't just civil fraud anymore. This is criminal. I know, I said. And then, because I needed to say it out loud, Robert, she's my daughter, my only child, and she tried to steal my life from me. I'm sorry, Catherine. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, I said, surprised by how strong my voice sounded. Be ready, because I'm not stopping until everyone knows what they tried to do. The police investigation took 3 months. In that time, Jennifer tried to contact me exactly once, through a lawyer who claimed she wanted to reconcile and suggested we go to family mediation. I sent back a 1-line response through Robert. I'll be happy to meet with Jennifer at her arraignment. The district attorney ultimately decided to prosecute. Jennifer and Brad were charged with attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The charges carried potential prison time. They took a plea deal. No jail time, but 5 years probation, mandatory repayment of all legal fees they'd cost me, a permanent restraining order, and Jennifer had to stand up in court and admit what she'd tried to do. I went to that hearing. I sat in the gallery and watched my daughter stand before the judge and say, in a shaking voice, I attempted to have my mother declared incompetent in order to gain control of her assets. I conspired with my husband to forge legal documents. I attempted to sell her property without her knowledge or consent. I am guilty of these charges. The judge had looked at her with such contempt. Ms. Bradley, you betrayed the most fundamental bond of trust. Your mother raised you, cared for you, and you repaid her by attempting to rob her of her autonomy, her home, and her dignity. You should be ashamed. I am, Your Honor, Jennifer had whispered. But I don't think she was. I think she was just sorry she got caught. After the hearing, Jennifer tried to approach me in the hallway. The bailiff stopped her. The restraining order was already in effect, but I could see her face. She was crying. Mom, she'd called out. Mom, please, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Please don't cut me out of your life. I'm your daughter. I'd looked at her for a long moment, at this woman who looked like my little girl, but had become someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd looked at me and seen not a mother, not a person, but an obstacle between her and money. No, I'd said quietly. You stopped being my daughter the moment you decided I was worth more to you dead or institutionalized than alive and free. I have no daughter. I'd walked away and never looked back. That was 8 months ago. I still live in my house. I still do my crossword puzzles, play bridge with my friends, volunteer at the library. Susan still comes by once a week, though now it's more as a friend than as professional oversight. My house is worth more than Jennifer and Brad thought. The market went up, and Robert helped me get it reassessed at $950,000. When I die, it's all going to a foundation that helps elderly people fight financial exploitation. Every time I walk through my door, every time I sit in my garden with Harold's roses blooming around me, every time I turn the lock that only I have the key to, I feel victorious. Not because I beat Jennifer and Brad, though I did, but because I beat something bigger. I beat the assumption that getting older means getting weaker. I beat the idea that seniors are easy targets. I beat the narrative that family always means safety. I'm 73 years old. I live alone in a house that's mine, really mine, and nobody can take that from me. And if that makes me a bitter old woman, well, I'd rather be bitter and free than sweet and stolen from. This is my house, my life, my choice, and that's exactly how it's going to stay.